Hello and welcome to today's session. I hope you're all doing amazingly well from whichever part of the world you are watching. For those of you who are watching me for the first time, I am Sonal Lubroy, and every Thursday I have a session scheduled live here on LinkedIn at 9 a.m. Spain time. And I talk about anything related to the wellness in hospitality business. Today, what I want to talk about is time, how we are not in the business of selling time. If you've been hearing me for a while, you know I talk a lot about how we're not in the business of selling massages, treatments, facials, products. We're in the business of solving our guests' well-being problems. And I'd also like to highlight that we are not in the business of selling time. And I can't help but think that, I've been there too. So I'm going to put my hands up. When I was starting up in the industry and learning about revenue management, everything really did peg around putting your high yield treatment. So the treatments that gave you maximum profitability at peak hours where you have most guests, but the highest price. And then probably the shorter duration treatments, you have them at a different time, at your off peak hour, less popular times, for example. Then we started introducing, drawing inspiration from the hotel's RevPAR. We introduced RevPath, so revenue per available treatment hour. And also, many times when I was learning about how to price my menu, many people were talking about, it's X euros per minute, 3 or 4 or 5 euros per minute. If you're a luxury, if you are mid scale, you're talking about 2 to 3 euros. So everything was pegged to time. Now, I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. We needed to do that in order to establish some form of system to measure the performance of our spa and wellness facilities. The problem is now that we've got to where we are, now that it is so clear that wellness is a profitable business and our wellness business within hotels has evolved far beyond just the spa area. I think it's time to reevaluate how we are focusing our business because that ultimately determines where our guests focus on without them knowing it. Because indirectly, all the business practices we adopt in our spas, be it here and across all the world, we are indirectly educating our end client on how our business works. We see that in, for example, the retail industry, we know when there will be sales. We also know that in the airline industry and also the hotel industry, when you're going to travel high season, or you're just going to pay more. And if you're going to go low season, you're going to pay less. So indirectly, the industries end up educating their consumers, and consumers end up following that path to a certain extent. And I'm not saying that consumers don't change and don't evolve over time, and hence, businesses need to evolve with consumers. But in general, there is a feedback loop. And we have educated our clients to think that they're buying time. And I think that is dangerous. Here's why. Recently, quite a number of my clients are coming to me. So my clients are owners of boutique hotels. We're talking about 30 to 60 keys, and there is a strong wellness focus. So they do have a spa facility, they do have a gym, they have other wellness related facilities because for them, wellness is an important revenue driver. For them, that wellness conscious traveler is who they want to tap into. And when they're looking to optimize or rehold the wellness area, the first thing we look at is, how are guests perceiving the wellness areas? What areas need changing? And I also speak to the wellness people who are actually working, our therapists, our receptionists. What are they seeing and what are they noticing? And the common thread, it doesn't matter which part of the world, we're talking about spa and wellness facilities within hotels. Guests normally ask for more time and high pressure massage. I mean, massage tends to be the bread and butter of most hotel spas, again, depending on locations. So, what ends up happening is that at peak hours, we have the spa fully booked. And if one guest comes 5 minutes late, and on top of that, the receptionist, for whatever reason, has had to cut short the turnaround time for the treatment, for the next treatment, the therapist sometimes ends up having to cut short the treatment of the guest. And instead of giving them, let's say, a 90-minute massage, they have to give them an 85-minute massage. And despite the guest having a fantastic treatment, the mere fact that the treatment was cut short by 5 minutes makes them feel shortchanged. And then, obviously, to the therapist, they say, what a fantastic treatment. But when they're checking out, they complain that I only really had an 85-minute treatment and I still had to pay the full price, despite having an amazing treatment. And perhaps the extra 5 minutes wouldn't have made a big difference. So that got me thinking, have we got ourselves in a situation that doesn't really serve us? So we are so fixated on time. And I'm not saying we shouldn't be using time. Clearly, I mean, if there's a 60-minute treatment, it's a 60-minute treatment, and we have to plan our businesses accordingly. But what I'm saying is, how are we communicating what we offer? We're not selling time, we're selling the result. And I just noticed it just with myself. And even as a consultant, when I was practicing, as a consultant, when I joined this industry, I've never charged by the hour. I was just always gobsmacked how people actually had the time to sit and count the number of hours they work on a project. And I think I was mainly influenced by my father, who was, a civil engineer, and he charged by the project, never by the hour. So I guess that was kind of normal to me. And when I ended up setting up my own consultancy here in Spain, I thought that that's the most normal thing. And I could not think of anything worse than charging for the hour. So there's some projects where I have had, I've really not earned much and I've actually looked at it at the hourly rate. But that was because I was still learning. I couldn't deliver the value within the time that I should have been able to deliver it. And there are the times where I've done it in such a short space of time, but the value is the same, right? So I shy away from hourly rates. And the reason I have so much success in my consultancy, I think boils down to the fact that I charge a flat rate. I charge that flat rate. That's the time, whether it takes me 20 hours or whether it takes me 50 hours or whether it only takes me 5 hours. I bear that responsibility. And obviously, coming in from the finance industry, I know what things are worth and I know what realistically I can charge for the value I'm giving them. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't offer something valuable. In certain circumstances, I can't charge a high fee for a high total fee for the value that, my work will be giving to the overall project. And I've also noticed when I have hired people to help me, when the shift has gone from value, this is the value I'm giving, to these are the number of hours I'm spending with you. And this is why I think, it's really not worth it for me. I end up focusing on, okay, I end up taking the lead and calling the shots. Like, okay, if this is the number of hours, then here is where I want you to be spending your time. And I also know roughly how long that takes. So, if it takes way too much longer than that time destined to that task, then, my focus ends up being on that time. And similarly, we're seeing that in our wellness facilities, in our hotels, if we are focusing solely on the time, what ends up happening is that the guest calls the shots. Now, I'm not saying that we don't personalize and offer treatments according to our guests' needs, but let's say a therapist is taught, okay, this is the protocol you need to follow for a 60-minute deep tissue massage. If the guest knows they only have 55 minutes, for example, because the treatment has been cut short. They will say, I'm not going to do the foot ritual, for example, and please leave out my feet or my head or my face and just work purely on my back. What that does is it ends up throwing our therapists, of course. They have a certain protocol they have been taught that they need to follow. And then suddenly, when the guest changes everything, that's when the therapist, and particularly the more junior therapists who are learning, who don't have that toolbox yet of experience, they end up spending, let's say, that the entire 55 minutes on the back because that is what the guest wanted. And the guest goes home with an experience that perhaps they weren't looking for. They might think that their bad back is the problem, but the therapist that knows better and the human body better would probably say, you're having the problem with the bad back because the root cause is elsewhere. But because the guest ends up calling the shots, because they say, okay, this is the time I'm paying for, then this is where I want you to spend my time. And when we do that, we don't deliver the value. So we end up focusing purely on time. We make our guests focus on time, and we totally leave aside the value we're delivering, the problem we're solving. So here's a curveball. Yes, we need the guardrails of time. And yes, if you're sending a massage, you're sending a massage. If you're sending a facial, you're sending a facial. Beyond the obvious, what if we focused on the transformation? What if we focused on what exactly is your objective? And that goes beyond, oh, do you want to feel energized? Do you want to feel lovely in the questionnaire? No, actually sitting down and say, how would you ideally like to feel? And after the treatment is over or the experience is over, checking in whether they actually felt that way. And when we do it that way, when we help our guests see the actual transformation they've lived, albeit small, they end up going home with a very different experience and also a very different mindset of what treatment they have just received or what benefits they have just received. So, in my rant today, not sure if it is overly eloquent, I did want to highlight that we aren't in this business of selling time. And we aren't in the business of selling massages, treatments, and facials. We genuinely are in the business of solving people's well-being problems, of delivering value to our guests. And I think all our assistants need to adapt to that. If we want to see success in our businesses, if we want to go beyond the maximum 18% of total hotel revenue and one day be that 40% of total hotel revenue, we can't do that when we are counting the pennies, right? Or counting the minutes. We can only do that when we're completely transforming our clients' experience, our clients' well-being. And in order to do that, we also need to have our teams focusing on transformation, on the value they're delivering, instead of this is the time and this is what I need to do in this time. So just wanted to bring that in for our consideration. And also I'd love to know, what are your thoughts? What are your feelings? What are your challenges that you're having in your businesses? And what's your thought on shifting focus and even the training from 60 to 90 minutes or whatever the minutes is to actually what value and what can you deliver in this short space of time? And if our focus is on transformation, then we will also ensure that our therapist's health is being taken care of. So instead of them just killing their digits doing a deep tissue massage one after the other, they'll actually be able to sit and truly understand and analyze their guest's health. What exactly is it? And that goes beyond reading the typical questionnaire that sometimes some therapists don't even read because they don't even have time, but actually really sitting down, reading that questionnaire, really trying to understand where the guest is today and where they would like to be at the end of the session, and really focusing on that instead of a protocol, instead of the number of minutes, instead of the exact treatment they have chosen, for example. So, on that thought provoking note, I wish you all a beautiful day ahead. Take care now.